Bruce, you have been running like mad, back-to-back spaces and podcasts, and you are really pushing, working hard to get the message out there.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, today so yesterday I woke up at 6, had a meeting in Manchester, came back, had a Daily Wire interview, then a New York Good Morning New Hampshire interview, then a call for my actual job, and I was on Lions of Liberty. Then I left the farm again, went to the Nashua Town Committee. And then this morning, WGMD, WATR, iHeartRadio, TNT National, and now you guys. So yeah, I'm keeping busy, and that doesn't even include all the signs and the stops and the door knocks and the volunteers and the campaigners and the staffers. It's epic. Your family is being very, very accommodating and sharing you with everyone.
Yeah, it's great to see Bruce. You get out there and fight and get after it. You know, the campaign trail is not easy. You have the motivation to do it. It can be a good time to go out there with motivation to get it done. Yeah, it's fun. I think somebody wise, the day I announced a very wise, hardened old political figure, when they first heard, they were like, oh, okay. You know, this is somebody who's seen like 1,000 races, and they said, have fun. That's the one piece of advice that I've seen over the years. You know, somebody who's seen 1 million races. And, that kind of made sense, because it was a little bit, little anxiety on the day I announced. I'm like, oh boy, it's real now. And that kind of calmed me down. I'm like, that's a good point. I think I will try and have fun. Sometimes I slip away. It's usually the consultants and the DC crowd and this kind of thing that tries to make me make it less fun. But if I could just do it my own way, then I'd have a lot more fun. I don't want the consultants totally take over, man. You know how that is. But
well, I don't have any. I have zero. So you don't have to worry about that.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I don't do any of that nonsense. I'm always dragged in the direction of conventional politics, and you get a lot of advice and a lot of people trying to push it, and some of it's probably really valid, but I just hate it all, and I despise it, and it really I just don't like it at all.
How long had you been considering running before you did this? I mean, as a cypherpunk, privacy is that's a huge part of who you are, and you sacrifice that to do this. How long have you been thinking about doing it?
Yeah, that was hard. I would not long at all, really. It was more like, January, February, March. January was when it was actually February. So in February, when I was politics came up, I was trying to recruit somebody to run for this seat. I tried everybody I knew. I tried to get Patrick Byrne to run. I even tried to get Jesse Ventura to run. I tried to get anybody, because I just wanted to see some kind of liberty person. Somebody, in 2022 with this kind of tyranny, if you don't have somebody run, that's a failure. And I kept trying to get somebody to run, and nobody would run. And so I was kind of mentioning that down at the round table, and everybody's like, well, you run. I'm like, ha, yeah, right. And then a bunch of people kept like egging me on all weekend. I'm like, no, seriously. I'm serious. Like, no offense, but I hear more. It's not a consideration. I'm not going to do it. And then I got to thinking, though, and it couldn't stop bugging me for weeks. I'm like, man, because one of my good friends down there looked at me and they said, well, if you don't do it, who's going to do it? Now's your time. You have to do it for your country. And I was like, oh, and it just ate at me for weeks. And then I'm like, I still was trying to get other people to run, and nobody would. And then I'm like, all right, well, so it wasn't long. It was only a couple months, really. And I got into the race later than most, but picked up momentum pretty fast.
Yeah, the idea of liberty and freedom is it's a little bit less common than we would hope. I think there's a great Plato quote that something along the lines that the price that good men pay for lack of interest in politics is to be ruled by not good men. I'm butchering the quote, but it's something along
I know. Yeah, you're exactly right. That is true. And you could expand that by saying our kids will suffer too. I'm doing this partly for my kids. And that's probably why I have such a, that's probably why I have such a, I don't know, flippant, almost, I really just dislike politics, the kind of attitude I was just displaying a second ago. I get into trouble at these meetings. I had two in a row this week, or two meetings this week. At one meeting, I said a thing which I've said many times, which is just, I don't want this job. I don't want to go down to DC. And somebody was like, no, you can't say that, man. That doesn't make me want to vote for you. And I'm like, yeah, but I it's really true. And part of the thing in my process, I really am trying to find somebody good to do this. I couldn't care less if it's me. I really don't want the job. I don't want to do the ego and stuff like that, which is why I'm especially resistant to a lot of this politics stuff. So when I have the, the consultant class and the Beltway folks like, oh, you have to talk to this guy because he will give you the such and such endorsement. I'm just like, nah, I'm not doing that. I'm given enough already. I'm willing to go down to that swamp for 6 years for freedom. And if the voters are smart enough to send me down there, I'll do what I say I'm going to do. And if they don't, then, oh, well, they're going to lose just as bad as anybody else. I'm going out there and I'm willing to work 12-hour days, and I'm willing to put myself out there, and I'm willing to go down there for 6 years. That's it. I'm not willing to do more than that. And I'm certainly not to my soul. So that makes me resistant to a lot of like the typical politic type stuff. It's like oil and water. I'm not a rule follower anyway. So but at the end of the day, it's all just about votes. So as long as I can get the votes and I get the word out, who cares how we do it? If I pull this off, it's gonna be one for the news for sure, because it's very, very unconventional. But I think we're in many ways just a lot better. I think a lot of the conventional stuff is terrible, unbelievably stupid. I mean, I can't believe just think about most of the politicians are they're the ones hiring the campaign managers and the consultants, and ultimately at least should have sign-off power on where all the money is spent. Well, just think about how dumb these folks are. I mean, most of them don't know anything about business, so they're just rubes. They get totally conned. I mean, unbelievably inefficient spending. I mean, it's nothing like the corporate world. I've been at real, high ends of the corporate world, and you couldn't pull this kind of stuff. Like, oh, hey, we'll do a spam texting service for $1 million. Maggie Hassan are like, okay, or whoever she hires, she hires somebody who hires somebody who hires somebody who hires a consultant, and it's all removed from it. It's somebody else's money. She dropped $5 million on YouTube ads, and they're advertising to people in Maine. They're advertising to my daughter who's 9 when she's watching Minecraft videos. It's just the politician class is getting conned by the consultant class, but eventually that's got to come crashing down. Hopefully, eventually, people ideas, and it won't be so easy for the voters.
Well, I think if you look at, if we look at the approval ratings, we're at approval ratings are just, I haven't looked at a graph of the worst time ever, but I think was it something like 80% disapprove of Congress, 59% would disagree with the statement that they approve of kind of what's going on, Biden's performance. And so it really becomes a question of ideas, because all those political consultants, they're telling you how to frame stuff. It's almost they're guiding you through the process of how do you craft a falsehood to get the most votes, and then whatever you do once you get there is less of an issue, rather than approaching it how you're approaching it with substantive issues.
Yeah, we need the best people in the role, and ultimately, and the current system is not doing that.
Bruce, can you agree more on the overspend on the consultants, and just it's kind of like momentum. But if you got the extra money to blow, some of these guys pull in stupid amounts of money from their donors, so kind of like, where else are you going to spend it? But the most important thing is the ground game, and getting out there and being active and going to meetings and showing up and showing that you're willing to fight too. So they're lucky to have you. Hopefully they'll be lucky to have you in the Senate as well.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you've got a good point. A lot of these folks do get such absurd money they can't even spend it. They'll have tens of millions in some of these races. And also, you're running against the gun. The one difference from the corporate world, I mentioned, we do a lot more efficient spending in the corporate world, but it is a different thing. This is very, very, very competitive. And it's just a different kind of product to sell. And you also have a very short sales cycle. You got to just kind of constantly be in reactive mode. That's another different thing for me to get used to. In the crypto world and in the securities world and in my regular day-to-day life, I plan things really, really carefully. One of my most valuable things I do is I walk around my phone a lot. I'll think about deals, and I'll talk to somebody, and we'll do a Zoom, and then I'll call one of my CEOs or one of my people, and we'll have an in-depth hour-and-a-half conversation, and then I'll think about it for a couple of days, and then we go back, and that's how you do the big deals. In this space, it's like every 5 seconds, hey, you want to do, this guy wants to meet you, this guy wants to meet you, we got a news interview here, so it's very reactive. The interviews and stuff is easy because that's just content, but when it comes to decisions, there's just lots and lots of decisions, and you don't always have the time to to plan like this filibuster I'm doing this filibuster on Monday. I'm going to speak as long as I can starting in the morning. And I would have liked to have planned it for months, plan it out and proper invites and do real targeted mailing to everybody in the state and things like that. But it's just, we kind of planned it. First idea was like a few weeks ago, a month ago, and just the time just crept up on us. I mean, it's going to be good, but if Satoshi Roundtable, for example, we start planning a year ahead in advance. So this roundtable in February is already planned and paid for and everything. So that's another difference with politics. It's a little bit ready, fire, aim, and very, very reactive. I look forward to. So anyway, yeah, it's just different from the corporate world.
Excellent. Well, it looks like we got Jimmy on, so we can go ahead and get started. Appreciate you guys jumping into jumping on for this conversation. I think that, Dennis is working really closely with us over at Texas Blockchain Council, with the Satoshi Action Fund, kind of helping educate, legislators, and we're really trying to push there. And the conversation today really wanted to look at, kind of touch base on the idea of liberty as it applies to the state, as it applies to government, and what we should look for in our legislators. How does Bitcoin help us? And kind of touch on those big topics, and then also, apart from theory, how do we go kind of the implementation process? What do you guys see as the implementation process? So before we run into that, Dennis, you want to talk a little bit about the Satoshi Action Fund, what you guys are doing over there?
Yeah, I mean, we're getting really far into the year here, but we've made a lot of progress just in the last month or so. We put together our entire advisory team. We set our legislative agenda. Now we're pretty much ready to start educating policymakers and regulators on the benefits of Bitcoin mining. We've been doing this in small scale, but we want to ramp it up dramatically. And we will have opportunity here soon in Mississippi to go educate the Freedom Caucus there. I'm talking to folks here finally in my home state of Oregon. It took a little while to break through, but I'll be talking to one of the caucuses here in Oregon as well. The whole point is really just to work from the bottom up, right? The states are a really great approach to this. We saw what happened in Wyoming. We've seen what's happened in Texas, but we also can see what happens when we don't get active enough. We see states like New York go the opposite direction. So end goal, just educate as many people as fast as possible in positions of power to see the benefits predominantly of Bitcoin mining, so that they can bring in the jobs, investment, innovation, and benefits to the grid that Bitcoin mining has to offer. And we're really excited about it, excited to be partnering with Texas Blockchain Council, and hopefully be doing some education here as we prepare for the new session coming up later this year.
Great. No, we're enjoying working with you and kind of going through putting together those action steps of concrete laws and getting stuff implemented. Jimmy, you want to jump in and talk a little bit about your approach to Bitcoin, the state, and tell most people know about you, but tell a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so not entirely sure what I'm supposed to talk about in this space, but basically, I'm a libertarian. I want the government out of as much stuff as possible. Unfortunately, a lot of legislators don't really see it that way, and part of making sure that we're in a good jurisdiction is lobbying, right? And I came to this realization that just sort of staying away from politics and hoping that your way eventually it's not a great strategy. Oftentimes, it is dirty. It's nasty, honestly. The way all of that stuff happens, and it's completely unfair and unjust. And I think it's fiat to the core. But we still have to do something, and part of it is educating these people and sort of like sanctifying their economic thoughts through Bitcoin. And we have this great economic example of how things actually work than how policymakers think it works. They think that through their policies or something that with their heavy hand things go right, when in fact it's the exact opposite. When they are hands off, and allow innovation to happen, and stop sort of like regulating things so much, then things tend to work out a lot better. I think the example that I gave Senator Cruz when I met with him last summer was, hey, like, Riot Blockchain decided to move into Texas specifically because of the regulatory environment in Texas. Mostly it was that it had free energy markets and it had cheap energy. You had the ability to spin up, 500 megawatt substation very quickly. And that's why they came. And this is why, a lot of other miners are setting up shop here. It's because of the regulatory environment. You try to do the same thing in a much more regulated state, and you're going to have a tough time. Even getting a 500 megawatts is going to take you like a couple of years in regulatory paperwork and so on. So, that's just one small example of how regulation sort of forces people a certain direction. And generally, it's more towards freedom, getting things done quickly. It's interesting because, all of the regulation around stuff tends to go out the window when you have a crisis. So, for example, in Europe right now, they're throwing out all their green energy stuff out the window because they need energy. There are literally people that are going to freeze in their homes because they don't have enough natural gas to heat their homes. And this sort of thing tends to expedite sort of like rationality. I think the EU decided to add nuclear and natural gas as clean energy so that they could, power themselves over the next few months due to this war that's going on in Ukraine. So
I think
all that is to say, what? Sorry.
Oh no, I was sorry. I was going to add. I mean, we saw that with the war in the Ukraine when they talked about, arms manufacturing. They brought that back to the table of if you're doing weapons manufacturing, maybe that is maybe defense of a country is something that's important for the defense of our natural resources. We see that playing out across the spectrum as soon as the incentives change.
Yeah, I think we're going to see something similar happen, not just in energy, but with money. When you have a crisis, you're going to see things move a lot faster. And from my perspective, we need to be ready with some concrete action steps that we can take. One of the questions that Senator Cruz asked us that day when we met with him was, okay, well, I buy everything that you're saying. It's great. It's great for the people of Texas, especially the people in Milam County and, where Riot Blockchain moved and everything else. And then this infrastructure bill literally came up like that day, and he had to go and vote on something. And he was like, okay, what do you want me to do? And really, we didn't have like a great answer. It was, okay, can you just try to strike the language or whatever? But I think the question that he was asking was deeper. What positive steps do you want us to take? And this is where the Lummis-Gillibrand bill, I think, is actually a positive step. And this is one that will get us more prepared for sort of like a new economic order that's starting to emerge. And we're seeing that the world is not going to be on the dollar standard forever. In fact, it's probably got a limited lifetime at this point because Russia is off of it. I'm betting that a lot of their satellite states will be off of it. And if China comes off of it, they're a main trading partner for the majority of the world. So they're going to start having some ability to say, hey, you need to use this currency or that currency, and then how do you trade between those countries and so on. This is the question sort of at a global scale going into this, the next 50 years or so. We have Bitcoin, we have this neutral thing. and I believe it will emerge. But there are lots of little things that need to be set in place first, so that we have the rails, we have the political program and everything ready for when that crisis comes, because it's coming, and it's already come to a lot of different places. I just read about how Argentina is expecting 90% inflation. I mean, imagine holding the peso right now. That's gotta hurt. Now, if you hold the dollar, it's okay for the moment because the Fed is tightening, but they're not going to be able to tighten forever, because unemployment will go up much higher if they keep tightening. And that's against their mandate. So they're going to have to loosen at some point. So once they loosen, it's going to loosen, and there's going to be a floodgate of money. And, you know, like the same sort of dose of quantitative easing doesn't work the next time, because the market kind of expects it. So you need to go even higher. So I expect, you know, there to be some sort of crisis that's going to come, and we need to be ready with a program and say, hey, this is what we want. And honestly, this might take a while. For now, what we need to do is to show that we are a force, that we have a lot of votes, that we can, you know, affect things and sort of show our political muscle a little bit. And then once we have that, once we are able to direct things a little bit through, the lobbying efforts that we're able to do, then we can sort of like put us on a trajectory to survive the next giant crisis. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I'm thinking about the whole thing, because the world is in kind of a weird place at the moment, and you got to prep for this stuff and see what's coming over the next hill.
Bruce, how are you, when you're entering in, what is your, how are you looking at implementing and getting involved? When you're looking at what Jimmy's talking about getting the political muscle and this kind of the steps of getting involved, pushing for, sound money, more personal responsibility, do you have, kind of next steps that you're thinking, and how do you fit within that message?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what Jimmy was saying about libertarianism and everything. Similar, pretty much the same philosophy. As far as and I also agree and hope that we end up separating money and state. And I'd love to see a Bitcoin standard instead of a fiat standard. That's a really, really big deal, and I think it should be talked. And it sounds, and unfortunately, I'm known as a Bitcoiner, of course, on the campaign trail. So it sounds like I'm just talking my book or pumping my bags, or I'm just obsessed with this geek technology that I've loved for many years. But I really, really believe it. I don't say this much on the campaign trail because I think people think they just think I'm shilling Bitcoin. But I really, really believe that it's very profoundly important for humanity. I think it's way more important than anything I could do if I elected or anything anybody else can do. The root of many of the problems in the world, really, really serious problems, the root of it is bad, broken money. And, I go so far as to say evil. I think it's really, and Jimmy has hosted conferences talking about, the connection with, what was the name of your conference, Jimmy? Bitcoin, the one that I spoke at.
Thank God for Bitcoin.
Thank God for Bitcoin, exactly, which was Christian themed, Bitcoin conference. But I believe that this is kind of about good and evil, and that may sound dramatic to people, and you don't have to be from a religious lens or not, but just it is about good and evil. If we believe that evil is a thing, regardless of what your beliefs are, evil is a thing in the world. I think we all agree on that. And if you look at the results of fiat, whether it's the Uyghur Muslims being put in concentration camps, or Obama and Biden and George W. Bush drone bombing people all over the world, or 20 years war in Afghanistan, or on and on and on. Even obesity. I mean, look at Safetian's book. I mean, even obesity is rooted in fiat. This is evil, bad. And Bitcoin is a sound money alternative with a limited supply. It's night and day difference. It's like a complete scam that's evil and causes a lot of death and a lot of destruction versus, voluntary real sound money that's, like more like gold. And so I think it's all about educating people that, unfortunately, they're going to get educated themselves if the system crashes. Probably a lot of the people will be educated the way that people in Argentina and Venezuela and other places have.
Looks like we lost.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. You know, they'll get educated when the dollar collapses. They'll be educated by themselves. But in the meantime, you know, the number one thing I encourage people to do is understand what money is. I don't even if they ask me about, a lot of people ask me about crypto, and I say, well, you know, I think the most interesting thing about crypto is Bitcoin, and that's really money. And what I'd recommend before you look at anything is just ask yourself what money is and what makes good money. And then hopefully I think that'll lead you down the road to Bitcoin. But that to me is the most important thing we can do in humanity. And I hope that that's some kind of piece of my legacy in my life. If I've helped a little bit push this Bitcoin thing down the road, then I really, really believe that will help lead to world peace and make the world a better place.
So what is the idea behind the state? What is the purpose of the state? It seems, you know, from the perspective of Bitcoin and the libertarian perspective, maybe share with some of the people in the audience. You know, it seems like we're at a very centralized spot at the moment. The federal government has you know, a lot of power. How do you see kind of pulling that back or pulling the reins on that?
Well, you know, the proper role of the state, in my opinion, is very little. I think it should be limited to protecting life, liberty, property, maybe enforcement of contracts in some cases, you know, maybe some other, you know, things like diplomatic relations with other countries, you know, making sure your passport works. But mainly protection of life, liberty, and property, which is, you know, 99% of what they do is just getting up in our business. And when you ask what's the purpose of government, depends for who. For many people, the purpose of government is that it's a boondoggle that steals from people and gives to them and makes them rich. You know, and that's a fact. I mean, there's a lot of people, a lot of billionaires who make their money from the government, and a lot of people making $100,000 a year on the backs of the citizens. So for them, the purpose is to enrich themselves or further their power or give them a cushy job. But the real purpose should be just limited to protecting people and protecting their rights from bullies and tyrants and, you know, people who would harm them and that kind of thing. So the way we get back to that is just, you know, we've got to absolutely swing the pendulum the other way. We've expanded government radically for decades now. We've got to radically swing the other way. And you know, interesting, somebody asked me what my dream bill would be as senator, and I made a joke. I said, I'd eliminate 20 different federal departments in one bill in a paragraph. And I kind of laughed and I said, well, obviously that'll never happen, you know, during my term if I'm elected. And then I paused. I said, well, actually, I take that back because we're in such crazy, weird times. It could happen. We could have such a catastrophic economic meltdown that even Elizabeth Warren has no choice. I mean, if the money's not there, and it's not there, and it's already not there, by the way, for those who don't know, it's all fake, and it's been fake for a while. You know, it's like when your house is rotted out, and you put a fresh coat of paint on it, and it keeps rotting. You know, that's what it is when they do these stimulus. And then eventually the whole thing just falls into dust. And it looks like a new home because it's got a fresh coat of paint, but it's all rotted inside. That's the way the economy is, and it's totally falling apart. So, you know, anything could happen. I mean, we could end up on the Bitcoin standard in 3 years, and we could have the federal government cut down by 70% in 3 years. And if that sounds crazy, I mean, if I told you what happened over the last 2 years, you would have thought that sounded crazy.
Bruce, when we started the room, I want to go when we started the room, you know, we said congratulations and also thank you for running. We know it's tough, and Bitcoin has kind of driven you to go and get involved in a way where you're actually trying to seek political office, something you may or may not have ever thought yourself doing. Kind of Jimmy saying the same thing here. We know, you know, Bruce, or the political campaign, everything's very visible. So we kind of know what you're up to. Jimmy, with regards to kind of your efforts, you're saying, you know, you're lobbying, you're interested in trying to influence the political system from that approach. Obviously, it doesn't always benefit us to share everything that we're trying to do while behind the scenes with our lobbying efforts. But is there anything that you can share? And if you can't share anything, any advice to people on ways that they could potentially be more impactful in the political process?
The main thing that I'm involved in is the Bitcoin Today Coalition, and I am trying very hard to, you know, influence Congress that way through the 501c4. And, you know, we did have input on the Lamas Gillibrand bill, and we continue to talk to those offices and so on. And, you know, it is a little bit rough trying to get this thing off the ground and get it all set, especially in a bear market like right now. But we're here for the long term, and that's been our focus the entire time. Is hey, we gotta make sure that we're doing right by Bitcoiners, and it's going to take some time. It's not going to be easy, but that's the path that I think is the right way to go, because otherwise it's going to be just a lot of random one-off kind of. I'd rather try to influence things and grow it. I think our ambition is to become something like AARP, where senators and members of Congress get scared whenever like they get like a bad grade or something from them. So yeah, that's the direction I think that we want to head in.
Yeah, it's great to know that you were having a positive impact on the bill and providing some intel on best ways that can be formatted. With regards to the Lummis bill, is there parts that you feel like you're most happy about? Anything in there that you feel like we can improve on in the coming time ahead? Considering I think that the word on the street is that it'll take some time to pass, but also it might be broken up into pieces. Is there parts that you would be most excited to see get passed first? Yeah.
Not having to report stuff under a certain amount, I think, is from a very practical perspective the easiest sort of thing that I think we can see out there, and I'm hoping that that's going to be something that comes to fruition, even piecemeal or something like that. But yeah, I would say that some of the I really didn't want to be a Bitcoin only bill, but unfortunately, this is kind of how the sausage gets made and so on. So it is what it is. But yeah, and we are where we are. So yeah, I'm not sure. Like the specifics of the bill. I mean, of course, it could be improved. There's a lot of sort of stuff that gets in there because you're trying to get a Democrat to endorse it and so on. But yeah, I mean that's just kind of the sausage is made.
Yeah, tough part about DC is having to make deals with everybody. It's nearly impossible to get a perfect bill passed in DC with that in mind. Everyone wants to get their cut of the process.
I think that'd be probably Bruce. That'd probably be one of the more challenging parts of entering into the fray is figuring out what can be done and what to try and get things across the finish line.
It's not going to be hard for me. I'm not going to compromise on anything ever. And that's as simple as that. I'm going to vote no on all these things. I love Cynthia Lummis, Senator Lummis. She's great, but I would have voted no on that. I vote absolutely no on every single thing that expands government in any way, anything that expands, the tyranny of the state or adds more checklists or adds more tax base or anything. The only things I'd ever vote for are, dilatory or, very, very unusual circumstances like declarations of war if we're invaded or something like that. So hopefully it'll be easier. And I tell every single meeting that I meet in New Hampshire that I'm going to vote. If you send me down there, I'll vote no every single time against tyranny, against government expansion, against taxes, and I'll vote yes on the Constitution and reduction of government every single time. So I'll just, as soon as they go down there and Mitch McConnell brings me aside and says, "Here's how you're going to vote," I'm going to say, "Sorry, you're not a New Hampshire voter, and here's what I promised the voters, and that's what they sent me down here to do, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm not voting yes on any nonsense ever. It's terrible, and the government is way too big already, and we don't need this." So for me, it's not going to be, and also like the kind of, if you do this, you do that, you got to give to this group to get that group. I don't care about any of that. I don't care about what committee I'm on. I don't care about, whose favors I'm going to be. Somebody said, if you go down there and you have this attitude, they're going to ignore you. And I'm like, wonderful. I don't like them. There's only like 3 or 5, 10 people down there that that I would want to with them anyway. Rand Paul will be cool to me. Thomas Massey will be cool to me. But, I just don't care anything at all about playing the swamp games. I don't want to serve on boards with Pelosi. It's like I said earlier, it's a big enough sacrifice just to do it. And Dr. Ron Paul did that, when he was in Congress. They called him Dr. No because he just voted no all the time. And I think we need that. At least we get a few people like that. It'd be nice if we had, 51 of them.
What do you see on the entrenched interest? It seems like there's, you've got the entrenched establishment, and if your principal approach, how does new blood fight against that? The encrusted establishment that's been there for years and played all the games, and they team up and work. And if you don't, how does new blood get in there and do it without an electorate that is has strong resolve?
Yeah, it just depends on your motivations, I guess. For me, it's like, use a lot of power over you. Like, we're going to run somebody in the primary against you if you don't vote the way you want. I'd be like, all right. Like, I don't really even want this job in the first place. 6 years is probably going to be more than enough for me. I would be stunned if I decided to run again. I'm squeamish about the possibility of winning and having to go down there for 6 years. It's miserable. So I don't care. Go ahead, threaten me. I'm trying to do the right thing for America. I could care less. Like, somebody said, don't mention Mitch McConnell. He has a huge PAC. And I don't care. I really just don't care. Like, his ideas are bad. I'm going to say his ideas are bad. He just voted the other day to, for these crazy red laws. They're trying to take people's guns away. So I don't care if he's big shot old Republican. That's not the kind of person I want to be. I almost said kind of politician I want to be. And it's just, even just calling myself politician feels weird because the whole thing is kind of broken, and I don't want to contribute to that in any way. I don't want to play McConnell games or Lindsey Graham or some of these folks that I just fundamentally don't agree with. Well, how would that serve anything? The minute I announced, there's people already trying to compromise. You got to do this, and we're going to help you craft your statement on that, and we'll get you some funding for it. And there's a lot of people you can tell immediately. Some of them are now following the crypto line. They just sell their soul to whatever. Like, I can raise $250 by saying Bitcoin. Okay, I'll say it. And that's what we need less of. We need more principled people who go down there and just kind of, in the old days, when I was a little kid, I was taught that in the original, kind of founding the country, it was about, you have a couple candidates they present their ideas, and whatever the people agree with is what they vote for. We should go back to those kind of more basic sort of principles where people just vote with, what they believe in, instead of having all these favors and it is the way it works. Like Jimmy says, that's how the sausage is made. But you can just stand and resist. You can be one voice as a new person. You don't have a ton of power. And as a senator, you're one of 100. But hey, that's one vote that you can make. You can do powers of filibuster, and you can hold up nominations, and you can cooperate. I think that the world, unfortunately, is going to get so bad that people and trying to convince even people I really disagree with, like, hey, this is right. We've got to do these things, because if we don't, we're going to lose our country.
Hey, Bruce, this is Lee Bratcher. I'm sorry to jump in late. I was at the Dallas Bitcoin meetup tonight, and wanted to ask you real quick on that topic. A lot of this stagnation seems to stem from two-party system, the primary system. What are your thoughts on the potential third party that embraces Bitcoin and or like ranked choice voting and some of the other innovations around democracy, a little bit more options to the voter?
Yeah, it's real hard, and it's the simple, sad fact is that very few people participate. So there's a lot of good ideas out there, but it's almost impossible to get even 5,000 people to show up. So even in the mainstream parties, in my primary, only 150,000 people show up. All I need is 55,000 votes, and I'll probably be the next senator from New Hampshire. Think about how absurd that is. I have 80,000 followers on my stupid Twitter. Jimmy's got a zillion. It's not that many people, but that's it. People just don't show up. They don't care enough to vote. They don't get active. They don't get involved in campaigns. So So to have an outside group like that have influence, it's just so hard when even the Republicans and Democrats barely show up, but they show up at a, like 20-1, 20 times more. The libertarians, it's tiny little numbers that show up. So, if you want to have a chance of winning, you really got to go with one of the main parties. So I go with the Liberty. I'm a libertarian for sure. I was looking 2 months ago, but I'm a Liberty Republican, like a Ron Paul Republican, Thomas Massey, or Rand Paul. And I wish there was a strong Liberty wing of the Democrats, because Liberty's good, and so yeah, it would be good to see some of these other things, but mainly people have just got to get active. I think it's easier to try and, you look at what you're doing with Republicans. If we could switch the Republicans over to be a Liberty Party, just keep winning and have more and more. In New Hampshire, we're already doing it. We have 80 Liberty Republicans in the state house. 80 of them, in this huge free state caucus, and tens of thousands, so, that's a good way you can kind of take over the Republicans or take over I'd like to see both, Liberty wing of both. And that would be good.
What do you think about Andrew Yang and his efforts to kind of create, a little bit more privacy and liberty-centric wing of the Democratic Party? He started his own party called the Forward Party. They've merged with a couple other centrist parties.
Yeah, he's very charismatic, kind of goofy, goofy idea and UBI and stuff. But, he's a very charismatic guy, and he certainly energizes a lot of young people and stuff. So I think it'd be great if he, within Democrats, I think he's probably a good force for the Democrats. And, I'd love to see him have the Democrats be, more pro-privacy or whatever. I wouldn't call Yang a liberty guy, but, he's got a few couple liberty-ish streaks here and there. So give him a couple points.
So another question on this topic, kind of this line of questioning, we try to do a lot of block walking in Texas for candidates that we endorse and support our views. Is that something that New Hampshire is such a small state? Like, do you have a team of block walkers, or how can the community that's both on this call and the broader community support you? I'm assuming there's very few people from New Hampshire on this call, so we can't walk blocks for you, but what are those practical things? Is it making calls, or is it just amplifying the message? What does that look like?
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, people in New Hampshire can walk. We take volunteers. There's a bunch of stuff on my website. You can volunteer. You can donate. I hate to ask for money, but it's expensive, all this stuff. My wife was like, "You're selling another $7,000 worth of Bitcoin to buy steel posts to put signs in the ground." So it's like, yeah, I would appreciate some help from my friends. So yeah, donate. You can volunteer. There's some calls. I'm doing this filibuster on Monday. I'm going to see how long I can speak about liberty, and maybe people can share it or whatever. I hope it comes out good. Share my content, that kind of stuff. I really appreciate the question, though. I appreciate the support.
Have you connected with any of the student groups, like Students for Liberty, Americans for Liberty? There's a pretty
a little bit, not as well as I should. I'm just not that organized. I just need more people to help. If you know somebody, by all means.
Sure.
You should definitely talk to Chris. I think it's Chris Maloney. He's the guy who more or less elected like half of the New Hampshire legislator through the Young Americans Through Liberty organization. So maybe I can try to have him reach out to you, because that could be pretty pivotal in order to get some people just kind of generally taking a look at what you're doing and trying to support you as much as possible. But also make sure you do have the opportunity to. I know it's a bear market, but it is very expensive to run for office. Please, if you can, send some sats or some dirty fiat Bruce's way.
Yeah, we also need to connect you, Bruce, with Wolf Van Laer. He's the executive director of Students for Liberty. It's an international organization, but I think he would be interested to know you. I saw him give a Bitcoin talk at the Dallas Petroleum Club recently, and he's looking for candidates like you, I think.
Jamie, when are you running for office?
Please don't make me. I think that would that would kill my soul. I really don't want to do that.
You don't know how true those words are, Jimmy.
I feel dirty every time I go to DC. Like I have to take like a shower. It's horrible. I don't like it. And it's not my cup of tea anyway. I'm a coder. Like, please don't make me go do stuff like that. That would just be the that would be miserable for me.
Yeah, it's soul crushing, and it's you got to pray all the time just to get through it. And it is. I do the shower thing. I feel like taking a shower after. Usually there's at least 2-3 phone, and I try and avoid a lot of them. I avoid 40 calls a day, but 2 or 3 slip through that I feel like, Beltway folks. I feel like taking a shower after. And I did go down there once, and it was like, oh boy, this place is dark, man.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very soul sucking. You got to be strong if you have a good heart, and I know you do. But you would do great for the country if you ever did run. But I like what you're doing. Like I said, I think Bitcoin is much more important than politics. So you're doing God's work on what you're doing with Bitcoin.
Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, I really would not like to do that. Like, just something else, please. Just anything. I'll go do something in Libya. I don't know, whatever it is, whatever the worst thing you can imagine.
Yeah, it's up there. I view it like being deployed. If I were to win, it's I don't know if I'll be happy. I mean, I feel accomplished. It's hard to win, but boy, I got 4 little beautiful kids, cute little kids, and this cool farm. It's dark going down there. I had to do a lot of soul searching and looking just to go down the physical. I looked in exactly how many days. I looked into the rules. Can you skip? You can't. I looked into like when the flights are and stuff. I'm quite detailed about like, is this even like doable? It's just, and it's interesting because it attracts like exactly the people we don't want. There's a lot of megalomaniacs who are like, hell yeah, I'll go down. There's power down there. They see it like a magnet. Most good people that I know don't want to do it, and I can see why. I've built crypto actually helped me a lot. Going to all these crazy conferences. Jimmy's been to a zillion. Everybody here has been to a lot of these. They're just over the top, especially if you're sort of well known in the space because you get invited to more stuff, more people want to talk to you, get selfies and everything. So that I think helped inoculate me to politics a bit. Especially, it's not like I have mobs or anything. And in fact, it's funny because some of these crowds are so small. But I think that helped a bit because it is quite soul attacking. I built up some good armor over the years going to all these big crypto conferences and stuff. And, I got better at, I mean, I'm naturally really quite introverted. People think I'm some kind of public speaking extrovert. I'm absolutely not. I don't like any of that stuff. Like, I'm super quiet, and I don't, I mean, I like to talk, but I like to, be away from people, honestly. So it is quite draining in some ways, but it's kind of fun too. And you can get better at it. You can, if you practice. It definitely. I'm much more comfortable out there speaking and stuff like that now.
Bruce, has anybody at the state level, any of the state reps or state senators, crafted policy in this space? Is there a state association in New Hampshire? What does that look like? Is there that you? Yeah,
there's a Melton, my neighbor, is on the blockchain council. I was going to be on it, but then I was running for Senate. And there's another guy who was going to be on it, and he's running for Senate too. He's my opponent in the primary. So both of us were going to be on that committee. But I recommended Melton for it, and she lives a mile down the road from me, so she's on it, and a couple other people. It's like the governor's cryptocurrency council or something like that. And there is legislation that just was passed a couple weeks ago, and it's pretty good. And it was run by my friend Keith Amon. He's a rep here in New Hampshire. He's a Free Stater, Liberty guy, and there's folks working on it. We have a lot of cool Liberty bills here that, with this Free State Caucus, they've passed a lot. Unfortunately, a few were vetoed by the governor, but, New Hampshire, anybody who's interested in liberty should look into the Free State movement. It's a bunch of people who moved to New Hampshire to pursue less government, basically. It's a really cool movement.
Lead in New Hampshire. So the Crypto Commission, which was recently formed, which Bruce would have been on for definitely if he wasn't running. But you've got Rep. Keith Amon, as he mentioned, who's been passing some of the copying and pasting some of the great stuff that was happening in Wyoming. And then you also have Michael Yubovich, I believe is his last name. He's a Bitcoiner as well, and he is running now. He's a rep, but he's running for the state Senate. So hopefully he has a he has an opportunity to get into the state Senate there. But they're really interested in doing a lot. I think we're going to be collaborating with them pretty significantly over the coming time, helping to educate the Crypto Commission. So I'm on board on that and make some headway over there in New Hampshire. New Hampshire has a lot of potential to move the right direction. It already is.
And don't forget, Jimmy, you got a place to stay up here. We got this cabin, and you could even use the barn to do a mini conference or something.
I lived in Boston for a long time. I just don't like the weather up there, so no real interest in going up there, even though it is a much freer state and all that.
It's nice right now. You got to go to. Have you ever been to Pork Fest? Pork Fest.
I've been invited several times, but I don't know, too many beat cashers at that thing. So not
that is true. That's true, actually. Yeah, New Hampshire had a weird thing because Roger Ver was originally the person that in like 2012 was selling it hard up here, telling everybody to buy Bitcoin. So they did, and they all got real rich, and they just loved Roger. And the other thing is, they weren't like in the crypto community. They weren't on crypto Twitter and stuff. They were basically like following Roger on the radio. So when Roger switched to Bitcoin Cash, they all switched to Bitcoin Cash. And then some of them split off to Satoshi's Vision, and then some of them split off to Dash. And then there's like a major Dash hub here, 12 developers or something. So yeah, it's interesting. As a Bitcoiner, I'm kind of. And I'm kind of in a minority up here, and I'm not even as much of a Bitcoiner as Jimmy. Jimmy's a more serious Bitcoiner. So yeah, that is interesting. But it's fun from a Liberty perspective. I mean, it's a fun event. I was just at it a couple weeks ago. Good folks, and the weather's nice this time of year at least.
I think Jimmy, you said that anything but going into politics and actually being elected. So I think that's you don't have to go to Washington, but you'll have to go to New Hampshire to help out up there.
Possibly. I just it's like I don't know. The whole game is just so gross. I just don't want to do anything with it. So. I get it that it's there's like this cool state and everything else, but yeah, just right now it's not something that I would be interested in at all.
I'm curious to know, Jimmy and Bruce, if either of you guys are familiar with the Bitcoin for Good guys. I recently found out that Yusuf is based in Houston. Not Yusuf, the Paxful founder, but the other Yusuf that runs Bitcoin. It's not Bitcoin for Good. It's what is it? The nonprofit that wells in schools and.
You can go check out Bruce's website and also Satoshi Action Fund, where we're going to be going on the offense for Bitcoin miners, trying to influence policymakers and regulators to adopt Bitcoin mining so they can bring in the jobs, investment, innovation, and the benefits of that.
I think Dennis had said he had a hard stop at 9 and was in and out. So sorry, Lee, you want to go ahead and finish?
Yeah, I was just curious, Jimmy and Bruce, if y'all connected with Yusuf, and I may be getting the name of his organization wrong, but it's either Bitcoin for Good or something like that.
Sounds familiar, but I don't.
I haven't heard of it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking in some of the places in various cities around the country, Houston being one of them. I'm sure Baltimore, some other in the Northeast. It'd be interesting to see if we as an industry could support some of these nonprofits that are going into communities that have experienced relative challenges accessing banking and financial systems. And this organization is doing it. I'm going to find it and post it real quick. But it's Paxful CEO is on the board, and it's ironically the name of the executive director is also Yusuf. But I'll find it and post it. I think we need to kind of, I know in the political world this would be seen as optics, but I think this is actually also just an important thing to do, which is to engage and support the people that are liaising and working in communities that are struggling. Probably not too many communities like massive urban areas in New Hampshire, but I mean, Jimmy, you're in Austin. probably see stuff like that in Austin all the time.
I haven't heard of this organization. Honestly, like I got thrust into the role that I have right now, and I would rather not be doing it if I could.
Jimmy, you bring up a really good point there. I think everybody on this call is to really appreciate what you and Bruce and anyone that's been in the space for a long time. You guys are in a position where you don't have to do this from a financial perspective. You're not needing it from an ego perspective. And it really seems that it's an act of service and painful. Like Bruce, for you to leave the farm, Jimmy, it's rough for you to jump on a thousand different speaking engagements and help out on the development side as well. So just for everybody on the call, really appreciate what you guys are doing, for Bitcoin and really this is gonna sound a bit cliche, but for your fellow Americans.
Thanks. I don't know if it's interesting where you are kind of forced to end up, and it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, I'll second what Christopher said and appreciate the work that you guys are doing. I looked it up. It's actually called Built with Bitcoin. It's not Bitcoin for Good, but one of those entities
I feel like I've heard of that one. Yeah. It's been a while though, so I don't know.
The founder is actually based in Houston, Jimmy, so it could connect you at some point. But I echo what Christopher said. The selflessness of those that don't necessarily need to be doing what they're doing, but they're doing it because they believe in it. Is generating.
Well, I'm going to say that, honestly, part of it is to protect my own wealth. So it is somewhat selfish. Don't make it out to be like a completely altruistic thing. This is a way I want to stay in Austin. I want to stay in the United States. I don't want to get kicked out. So it's kind of a self-preservation thing. And I think any honest Bitcoiner, if you think through sort of like the consequences of how it all works, it's kind of what you end up having to do. I mean, like the reason why I taught a lot of developers is not out of the goodness of my heart. It's because I was making money doing it. That also happened to secure my wealth by creating more developers for the ecosystem that would, create more people that, created better software, and everything would be better as a result. But that's, I think, what any good capitalist system ends up doing is that, things just sort of align themselves, because whatever you want to do end up essentially good for you and other people. That's the essence of capitalism. And, free trade is everyone's better off after the trade. And that's like, in a sense, I'm having to do this and I'm moaning about it and complaining about it. But in the end, it's a way to try to secure my future, my family's future, my children's future, future of Texas, future of Austin, all of these places that I know, love, and want to prosper. These are, there's something at stake here, and it's not an altruistic thing. It's part of the what you need to be doing if you think through it from sort of like a first principles approach.
What's the invisible hand, right? The market's invisible hand at work.
Yeah, and a good clarification too, for Jimmy. So I got a controversial question for both you and Bruce. As adoption grows, I continue to see folks on crypto Twitter talking about shitcoiners and being pretty aggressive. Jimmy, you've always been very tactful, firm and in your opinions, and you and I have talked about this kind of stuff before. What is your take on kind of the aggressive maxi versus just the principled Bitcoin maximalist? How do we kind of address that? Because I do think that's kind of slowing adoption, in a sense. Have you given that much thought?
I've given it a lot of thought. First of all, I think the elephant in the room right now is Nick Carter, and people are upset that there are people being mean to Nick Carter on Twitter, and honestly, like he's got the exact personality to handle this sort of thing because he's on the sensitive side, and he has like bursts and he sort of like. I don't know, shoots from the hip a little bit, wears his emotions on his sleeve, and it's a bad combo. And I feel bad for what happened to him, but it's not necessarily anyone's fault. It's just kind of the situation. Well, I will say it's somewhat Nick's fault because he put himself in that position to like sort of do that, and he's a public figure. Did he expect to be treated with kid gloves because he's a VC? I don't think so. I can't like the question you're asking. I think presumes that this is like some central authority that has the moral authority to tell other people stop harassing X, Y, or Z. I don't think I have that. I don't think anyone has that. I don't think anyone really should have that within the Bitcoin ecosystem. This is how you sort of end up with sort of like a social centralization that can also be kind of dangerous because, if it socially centers around like 25 million instead of 21 million, then that's the direction it'll go. So, in a sense, like, the trolls on Twitter, the mean people on Twitter, I mean, you kind of have to deal with it, right? Like you can't kick them out. This isn't a country club where if you misbehave, now they're like excommunicated or kicked out or whatever. That's not how this works. It's a decentralized system. And in a decentralized system, you can't kick anyone out. That's how it is. And if you're upset about the other people that are in there, well, then you're the one that needs to get out. If you want a more gated community, there are plenty of them out there. Go and join one of those. But what Bitcoin is, and I would take issue with your stance that it's actually hindered Bitcoin adoption. I actually think altcoins are the reason why Bitcoin adoption has been hindered because they've been saying lies about Bitcoin. They're the ones that spread all kinds of FUD about Bitcoin. We know that Brad Garlinghouse is spending millions of dollars donating to anyone that will say bad things about Bitcoin from an environmental perspective. I'm sorry, not Brad Garlinghouse, but Chris Larson. Like Vitalik is saying FUD about Bitcoin all the time. Charles Hodgkinson is saying FUD about Bitcoin all the time. This is a common sort of thing, and they're the ones that are hindering Bitcoin adoption. So for them to blame Bitcoin maximalists for the lack of Bitcoin adoption, because you're so mean or somehow that's not allowing people to join Bitcoin. No, it's them. It's the altcoiners. It's the scammers that are muddying the waters, that get this word crypto into the mainstream and make it and conflate themselves with something that's pure and good like Bitcoin with their scammy pre-mined VC-backed thing and saying we're the same thing, ours is just better. That is the real moral issue here, is that those are the people wrong and not the maximalists that are saying bad things about Nick Carter, right? Like, or making fun of him or something like that. Those are not your enemies. Those are not the people that are, causing, Bitcoin to not be adopted. The people that are causing Bitcoin not to be adopted are the altcoiners, are the people that are muddying the waters, are the people that are scamming, people not just in the United States, but in Iran and Nigeria and Turkey. These are the people that are hindering the adoption. It's crazy to me that Bitcoin maximalists are somehow being blamed through, I don't know, some tweet by Vitalik or whatever. It's ridiculous. This is like the most elaborate head fake and an attempt to, place blame in the wrong place. And I hate that. I hate that about this space, that there are so many people that are scamming, that want to blame Bitcoin and try to make it seem like, oh, the Bitcoiners that aren't playing nice. No, the Bitcoin maximalists are calling you out on your scamminess. And if you don't like that, then, stop scamming. But as long as you're scamming, you will get called out. So I hate this sort of like moral superiority that they seem to have. Oh, we're civil. Oh, we say nice things about each other. Yeah, this is exactly how Alex Mashinsky scammed people out of billions of dollars. This is exactly how Luna got billions of dollars and people lost lots and lots of money. And this is how 3AC works. The scams are out there. They're starting to crumble. Those are the people that should be held responsible, not Bitcoin maximalists on Twitter that are saying mean things to Nick Carter.
Yeah, I agree that there's certainly, a lot of scammers out there that need to be called out. I guess my question, though, is more so internal to the Bitcoin community. There are people that do it in a tactful, winsome way that reflects well. And there are people that do it in a kind of inappropriate way. And I'm not saying that there should be a police or a Bitcoin, authority that shoots those people down or kicks them out of any community in the least. That would be antithetical to what we're, thinking about and talking about here. It's more so that there are people with influence within the Bitcoin community that could maintain their principles, but also encourage better behavior. I mean, we can't control what Brad Garlinghouse is going to do or some of those crazy folks. But anyways, yeah.
Well, to answer your question, the reason why we are quote unquote toxic is because we tried that way. And we tried that way in 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015. It doesn't work. The fact of the matter is, unless you come down very hard on these people and call them out as scams, which they are, they don't listen to you. And the only way you get people to listen in the least is just tell the truth. And honestly, like what you're talking about is kind of tone policing. And I don't agree that helps at all. You can say it nicely, you can say it harshly. People are more likely to listen if you say it harshly. If you say it nicely, you would think that more people would listen. In actuality, people don't. And it's really a way to get you to make it seem like you're approving of their scam or something like that. And the more you challenge people about this stuff, the more of a jerk you're going to seem. But that's kind of what truth tellers always seem like to scammers is, oh, you're being so mean, you're being so uncivil, you're being so whatever. So I reject this notion that, Bitcoiners are too mean or that they could do it in a winsome or more charming way or something like that. I don't think there is, because you're always going to sound like a jerk to somebody that doesn't want to hear what you have to say. And this is something that you learn if you read the Bible. Every prophet is stoned to death or killed or whatever, or humiliated because they're telling people things that they don't want to hear. And that's just the reality. It doesn't matter how you say them. Ultimately, the truth needs to get out. And if you're saying the truth, the way in which you say the truth, I don't think matters nearly as much. The people that are lying, those are the people that you should be going after. And there are a lot of liars in this space. And we know for a fact that they've scammed a lot of people out of money. Why aren't we going after them? Why aren't we saying, okay, Vitalik, you're talking about this coin, Ethereum. Can you tell us about the pre-mine and what you did? And he's lied about so much stuff. He said code is law. He said this, he said that. No one calls him out on any of that stuff except for the Bitcoin maximalists. Now, does it sound toxic to anyone that owns Ethereum? Does it sound uncivil to anyone that owns Ethereum? Absolutely. That's what the truth sounds like to somebody that, that owns it or doesn't want to hear it. So I reject this notion that there's a civil and kind way to tell folks that, you've been completely scammed, that you're doing something completely immoral. At some point, the way they interpret it will always sound toxic. And that's just the way it is. And unfortunately, like, a lot of people would rather have everyone get along and dance with flowers and rainbows or something like that. The real world is not like that. And I've been in this space for a long time. I've seen all the arguments for a long time. And the fact is, you can't nice people into your point of view. The only way they really listen is you have to get their attention oftentimes by, telling them the truth. You've been scammed. You are scamming. You are doing something immoral. And they might hate you for a while, but when the market dumps or, Celsius goes bankrupt or something, they remember what you said and they go, okay, yeah, that was right. And I was wrong. And it's a very expensive lesson to learn, but at least they learn it. If you were nice to them, they're not going to remember anything that you said. It was just, I think somebody said, expressed some doubts about what I was doing, but I don't really even remember who that was or why they said it. The maximalism is there. The toxicity is there for a reason, and it's evolved this way because this is the only way that seems to work.
I think, Jimmy, those are great points. I think anytime you're telling the truth and you're speaking truth to people, it's something that they don't want to hear, and you're fairly blunt. I think, Bruce, when you're campaigning and you're just telling people what you're telling people what they need to hear, and people are trying to tell you, hey, you need to frame it this way, you need to frame it that way. It's how do you polish it up? People don't like that. It rubs them wrong. It's not what they wanted to hear. It's and maybe they blame you in the short term, but in the long term they remember it. I think one of the things that we've come across, Jimmy, with say the TBC is we've just the name of having the blockchain council versus the Bitcoin council. We've had some people that have that are fairly strongly opinionated about it, and I'd say that the TBC is we do whatever we can. Bitcoin is the best and the biggest. Fixing the money is the biggest thing, but we're also trying to handle the banking and some other stuff that's on there as well. So I think that's kind of a little bit of a backstory to kind of where that question comes from where I've wondered with it. I think with the scam coins, it's 100%, the Mashinsky and Celsius, what they've gotten away with, and people have tolerated it. The space is tolerated. A lot of people made money. You have Chamath laughing on the, you have Chamath laughing. You have Novogratz, and everybody's following these people. And if there's not that strong response, people get hurt. People lose their. We know people that have lost their entire life savings because they trusted the Anchor protocol and what these guys were shilling. So it is I can definitely hear the emotion and the passion that you've got behind it, and having been in the space for so long, you've seen all of those things play out time and time again. Bruce, do you have any? Oh, there's a quote here. My wife sent this. She's listening. And she never hate jealous people. It's a quote by Paul Kehoe. Never hate jealous people. They are jealous because they think that you're better than them. In reference to shitcoiners, in relation to Bitcoin. Excellent. Well, we appreciate you guys' time. We don't want to infringe on it too much. Did you have any parting thoughts, Bruce? I think we shared we've shared how people can donate to your campaign.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I really like Jimmy's points, and I think Jimmy's a really great example of exactly what he just said. The last minutes that he was talking should be a clip, because it's a really good example of speaking very bluntly, for sure. You know, I was going to make the joke like, you know, tell us how you really feel, Jimmy. But you know, he's very, but he didn't say, he didn't swear at anybody. He didn't like, you know, and also Jimmy has done that many times. He's willing to back up. He's willing to debate if somebody says no, this isn't a scam, or pre-mines are okay, or whatever. Pre-mines are the same. Pre-mines are the same as proof of work mining. Jimmy has and will, you know, back that up, you know, and argue that. So I think that's a really good example of, you know, the kind of model to follow. I always, you know, I was lucky to travel around the world and you know, I don't know, various experiences where I met a lot of people, and I have a really high, I've met like Taliban and like, yeah, I've met all kinds of, I've been in so many crazy, I can't even repeat the things I've heard people say. Like I've been in many rooms and places around the world where people are like, this race is blank, this religion, you know, almost a dozen different groups. And so I have a pretty high bar. And I'm, you know, Jimmy makes really good. I mean, you know, I think, and I, you know, I've known Jimmy a while, and I listen to him and respect what he says. And I, you know, I think a lot because I've been more sympathetic historically to a lot of, you know, the folks. But you know, also I haven't invested in these things. I sure as hell haven't pushed them on anybody or, you know, been like a sponsor of, you know, I've never gotten a pre-mined coin. I've never been paid by any of these things. You know, I've invested in a couple of them, but not for many years. I'd say 4+ years. I haven't bought anything other than Bitcoin. But I always kind of like, you know, I like people, and I try and see even people who are, you know, Taliban, like crazy people. I've met like people that have just really fundamentally, you know, like messed up beliefs, and I try and find some kind of common ground, you know, and there's probably some weakness to that. I mean, to Jimmy's point about, you know, speaking truth, you know, he's right. You know, if I might be on the nice guy side of sort of like trying to see good in somebody, and you're right, they might not remember at all. You know, so I think those are all really good points. You know, I think that's a good model. I mean, the main bottom line on the whole Twitter thing and crypto and everything, I'd say just spirited debate, exactly what Jimmy's just doing, what we've done in this call. You know, spirited debate is good. Let's talk and, you know, hash it out. Like, is something a scam or not? You know, and try and be civil about it, and try and, like, you know, because some people are on the fence and some people don't understand or whatever. You know, I think discussion is good, and that goes for politics too. So, yeah, cool. So, but yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Good to see you, Jimmy, and good to see you, everybody else. Appreciate the opportunity. It's fun.
Thanks for being on, Bruce. We appreciate it. Thanks for being on, Jimmy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry, what were you saying?
I was going to ask you mentioned a foundation that you're working with out where people can donate or get involved. If you want to shoot that over to me, we'll get that out.
Yeah, it's BitcoinTodayCoalition.org. I just want to say one more thing. I think this idea that we need to be civil really needs to be challenged, because that is exactly what the authorities want you to do, is to be civil to each other. It's a way to gain your compliance, and that in particular is the way they control you. It's what we call tone policing or whatever. It's not about what you say, it's about how you say it or whatever. And I completely reject this idea. I think it's a modern idea. It's not anything anything ancient or from any sort of religious background or anything like that. I like you read through the Bible. There are plenty of people that are insulted straight to their face. They didn't care about civility or tone or anything like that. I don't think that matters quite the way that a lot of people think it does. The only reason it matters is because you are able to appease the people in power, and it's a way in which you can show your compliance. And I reject this notion that I need to comply with those that think that they have authority over me. That my only authority is God, and I refuse to play this civility game, which unfortunately has taken over Twitter and many other places. So all that is to say that Bitcoin is part of this revolution in rethinking certain things. And if you do go from first principles, you will see that, what a lot of people in Bitcoin are doing, they're following their ethics and their first principles, maybe in a different way than you. And instead of condemning them and calling them mean or toxic or stupid or whatever, why don't you try to understand what they understand? And instead of condemning them, try to understand what it is that they know that you don't know. Because I think the assumption for a lot of people that condemn that stuff is, oh, these people are clearly wrong. And I don't think that's a safe assumption.
So, Jimmy, I would say I don't disagree that if someone is threatening your liberty, civility is not always the answer. It's not necessarily the answer in certain cases where like convictions or concerns or beliefs or liberty. Absolutely, be uncivil in times like but the research says with books like How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, that's been around for 100 years, the research says you're going to convince more people with, and I guess, Bruce, this is to your point, in the spirit of spirited debate, I'll just respectfully disagree that Bitcoiners can reach more people with civility. And again, not if liberties are threatened, not if, call out scammers with all the force that you can call them out. But in these areas where it's not issues of liberties being threatened, or areas where it's not a convictional belief, there is room for civility there. And I think if you take the principles of some of these psychologists like Dale Carnegie, who wrote in the 1920s about how to win friends and influence people, there's something to be said for that.
And he wrote that for a corporation, correct? This isn't about climbing your way up the fiat corporate ladder. I have no interest in that, honestly, and I don't think. It applies for stuff that Bruce is doing, which is climbing the ladder of politics or whatever. But I have no interest in doing any of that, and I would rather live a life that is based on truth rather than these polite lies. And really, that's what civility is all about. It's pretending what the other person is saying has some legitimacy when it doesn't. And the thing is, if you are sort of like giving a platform to scammers, or if you are endorsing scammers or whatever, are liberty things, right? Like and you should be full-throated in denouncing them. And I've been in this space for a long time. You never nice people into Bitcoin, right? Like if your friend owns Ethereum, you're not going to be nice to them and then convince them through your niceness that, oh, they should come over to Bitcoin and sell all their Ethereum. That's not how it works. In fact, it doesn't work for Christianity either. Nice people into Christianity, you get most of the time it's them coming to you and say, I've been thinking about these things. Do you want to answer some questions, because you raised your flag and identified yourself as a Christian to non-Christian people? That's usually how it works, at least in my experience. It isn't, you're just so nice, maybe I should listen to you and take your opinions. That never happens. That's just not how human nature works. And that's how the authorities want you to think that it works, because it makes you a compliant slave to the state. But that's not how things actually work. And if you speak, some people will never listen to it, and that's to their shame, and that's their problem. But for some people, once they hear the truth and they hear that ring of truth, they come and talk to you about it. And that to me is the right way to go about it, rather than humoring their lies, which I think is really what civility, quote unquote, is all about in these discussions. Okay, let's humor this guy and pretend that Ethereum is not a complete scam, and make it so that we can gain their favor or something like that. I reject that sort of like civility, because that doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't do anyone any good, and really you're just letting scammers get away with more scamming rather than telling the truth. So what if more people are are turned off, at least at the beginning. I'm only really interested in the long term anyway. And if they don't have the eyes to see the truth, that's on them. If I've spoken the truth, then then I'm done. But if I haven't spoken the truth out of civility, then that's on me. And I would rather have it be on them, because I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that they know the truth.
Yeah, I agree. The way that you've defined civility is, I guess not the definition of civility that I would have. I think not telling the truth, because you're trying to be nice, is wrong. I completely agree. But I think there is a space within, like, the definition of civility that I was working on is the ability to confront someone or tell someone the truth in a way that made them more likely to see the error of their ways. I guess so. We're kind of starting from different definitions of civility.
I think one thing that we look at from a civility standpoint is I think that, like, if you're looking at, say, Celsius and Anchor, there were Bitcoin maxis that were very, very vocal about the mechanics and the likelihood of scam, and they were very vocal about it, and there were others that were like, yeah, it's maybe there's a little bit of risk to this, and the true message of coming across for how horrible they were, or how far Celsius was so crazy out on the risk curve. It was it was a fairly common with people in the know, but a lot of people didn't say things from the perspective of, hey, I don't want to ruffle feathers. Maybe Jimmy, in polishing something up, there sometimes there is information that is lost on. It's not just that Anchor is, hey, just not this great deal, and maybe there's some risk there. It's no, you will lose your money. There's something that's been exactly like this, that people have lost all of their money, and I need to be adamant about it because I care about you losing all of your money. And I think that's navigating that, striking that balance between being having it polished and how someone feels about it versus really getting the full truth about it and having someone realize that it's challenging. And people have, Jimmy, your energy behind it is I know of two people, like there's ex-football player who he put his entire life savings, he mortgaged out his house, is now people would know his name. He's completely bankrupt. I mean, he's not going to go back into the NFL. He can't do that. And there are people that's happened all the way through society. And there were a lot of people that have some culpability in that. I think that's what, Jimmy, am I?
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, if anything, with the whole Celsius thing, people were not toxic enough, or the Luna thing with Do Kwon, people were not toxic enough. If they were more toxic about it, we would have saved some people from investing in that stuff. And this is what people complain about is, oh, you're being so uncivil. Oh, these artists are just trying to create an NFT so they can, monetize their art or whatever. You realize that you're running on an entire scam. That this is a house of cards, and that the only people getting rich are the people, that the VCs and the people on the creating these platforms and pumping these like fake artists or whatever. This is a scam, and I can't emphasize this enough. When you say it that way, a lot of people react badly, but you're telling the truth. How they react is not your problem. Right? If you are speaking the truth, how they react to that truth is not your problem. You're trying to help them. Now, like maybe it's your best friend and you know this exactly how they'll react, so maybe you can tailor the message or whatever. But you're speaking to a large crowd of people or somebody you don't know. You just speak the truth. How are you supposed to know what their personality is and how they're going to react or whatever? If you just speak the truth, at least that'll get through. If you try to tailor it too much, there's a very good chance that your message gets lost. And that's unfortunately what happened with Celsius, with 3AC, and all this other stuff. We weren't toxic enough. Not enough people spoke the truth. That was the problem. It wasn't that, oh, so many people were scammed by, you know, such charismatic people or whatever. No, there were lots of people that knew, and there were plenty of Bitcoiners. I probably should have looked into it a little more and condemned it a lot harsher than I did. But I mean, people kind of expect that from me, so they can't hear that from me anymore, right? But this is what I'm talking about. All of this other stuff, right? Ethereum, NFTs, Cardano, what have you, it's all scams. They're scams on the same order as Luna or Celsius or whatever. You just haven't realized it yet. And if you don't believe me, well, then just wait, right? And I'm comfortable waiting because I've seen this stuff. I know what the tech is behind it. I know how insecure it is. I know how centralized it is. I've been studying this stuff for a long time. If you don't believe me, go verify it yourself. But most people do not want to verify. They don't want to put in the hard work. They're too lazy. They'd rather just listen to the debate and pick whoever they like better. And that's where, quote unquote, civility comes in. Oh, okay, well, maybe you can convince the people that are too lazy to do their own research. I have no interest in helping those people because they're just going to flip their minds in the next debate when they like somebody else better. That to me is a losing game. You just tell the truth, let people discover it for themselves, and maybe they get a very harsh lesson through the market. But you know, you tell the truth, and it's going to sound toxic. It's going to sound uncivil. It's going to sound horrible to people that don't want to hear it. But that's how it always is with the truth.
Yeah, I think, though, there's a distinction between the way you communicate that to the founder who's pre-mined whatever 40% of the coins or some ICO, you know, scam or something like that, versus the general public that's like, hey, I'm just learning about this industry for the first time. And there's certainly needs to be a distinction there, though, right?
What would you say to the newbie then? Like, what? Okay, these things. What I tell newbies is these things are scams. Go with Bitcoin. If you waste your time on this, I promise you, it's going to be a giant waste of time. It's going to suck out your soul, and you're going to be doing immoral things. Now, that's pretty harsh, right?
Jimmy,
I tell people that.
You don't tell them that they're going to do an immoral thing if they buy Ethereum. What I tell them is, hey, go into the space, buy the gold, the gold standard, which is Bitcoin, and that's it. You don't have to You don't have to like tell them they're going to do something if they're buying Ethereum.
I think they're doing something immoral. Well, I mean, if they maybe buying whatever, but if you're promoting it, certainly you're doing something horribly immoral. What you're doing is you're promoting a scam. And the thing here, Lee, I think that you're not really convinced of is that Ethereum is a scam. And I think that's ultimately what it is it's been around a while. You're not that familiar with the technicals underneath. So you think, oh, well, people in Ethereum probably have a point. Jimmy has another point of view. And the truth is probably somewhere in between. This is what happens when you trust and don't verify. Go verify things for yourself. And you will know that Ethereum is a complete scam. It had a 70% pre-mine. It sold a bunch of tokens to the VCs. They're the ones that are pumping a narrative every 3 months. If you understand that, then you would agree with me. But because you haven't done the research, haven't looked at the code, don't know what Turing complete smart contracts, security vulnerabilities are, you say stuff like, well, to buy Ethereum and promote it. And like that's ultimately what it is. It's like if I said that about Luna, oh, okay, if you buy Luna, you're ultimately going to lose your money. And if you're one of the early Luna people and you're promoting it to other people, you're doing something immoral. I think I would be completely justified in doing that. You don't believe that for Ethereum because you don't think Ethereum is a scam. I think that's what it is.
So whenever I talk to people about this, I tell them, hey, Bitcoin is the asset that you should enter into this space with. I don't suggest any other assets. I don't talk negatively about other assets.
Why don't you talk negatively about other assets? Because, you don't talk negatively about Luna. You don't talk negatively about Celsius. You don't talk negatively about 3AC or like whatever coins, they're promoting or the pump and dump NFTs. You don't warn them about that. That seems like that would be being a very bad friend, because these are all landmines that they can all get their portfolios blown up in.
I certainly encourage them to not, like, if they're using an exchange, to take, Bitcoin off an exchange and into a hardware wallet, a Trezor, or something like that. There's just not enough time in the day to spend an extra 10 minutes in that conversation to say, hey, you've got people, you're getting them into the space, you're talking about them, there's plenty to talk about holding their own keys and all that stuff, without getting into all that, the other things that we're talking about. I mean, what's important is what's going to save them in the end, which is, hey, don't have your stuff on Voyager, don't have your stuff on Celsius. And if you do, it's a risk. You're taking a risk, and there's no risk-free return in this industry. I mean, Celsius was paying 4% on 5% on Bitcoin. There's a lot of people on this spaces probably that were happy to take that return for a season. And then when they saw that this could potentially go bottom up, they pulled it to either a hot wallet or a cold storage wallet. I mean, I'm not saying that people are going to be foolish in working with their friends and colleagues in this space. There's just a way to do it that's not.
I disagree with your approach, because what your friend probably ends up doing is buying like tons of Celsius tokens, and they could have had it on their own hardware wallet or whatever, and they still would have gotten wrecked, or Luna Terra tokens or whatever. The thing is, like, if you're not warning them of the landmines, you're just being you're not warning them of anything. You're just saying, oh, go buy Bitcoin. I'm going to be neutral to this other stuff, so I can curry their favor, maybe, or whatever, and hedge my. I think that's the wrong approach, and what you've doomed them to is years of shitcoinery, and that's unfortunately the norm for this space. Is what a lot of people do is they get into Bitcoin, they get into shitcoins, they stay in shitcoin land for 3-4 years before they get back to Bitcoin after realizing that they lost most of their money in shitcoin land. If you can't spare 10 minutes to warn them off of that path, which is so freaking common, and it's been common since 2011. I've seen it over and over again. It doesn't matter when you got in. Almost every single person goes through that. The few people that haven't usually are warned off of it very early and rationally decided, okay, well, I'm going to stick to Bitcoin. Those are the people that have done well. All of these other people that go into altcoins or whatever, they end up selling their souls for some altcoin where they can get an airdrop and they can promote it in a Discord group and sell it to their friends and family, which is highly immoral. I mean, that you really don't save them from that. It's not worth 10 minutes to you to go do that. I mean, that seems ridiculous to me, Lee. Honestly, I've seen this happen so often, with people getting wrecked on that stuff, or going off to altcoin land looking for the next airdrop, for the next hot token, and being perpetual gamblers for the rest of their lives. I mean, you really want to doom them to that and not warn them that that's a possibility? That seems ridiculous. You're not being a very good friend. You're not being a very good consultant. If you were going off to some foreign country that you weren't familiar with, and somebody didn't warn you about all the scams that you might encounter, you would consider that person not very knowledgeable about that place. And if you're not warning them about all the scams that are available that you might fall into, then you're not giving them very good information. And if you want to call that civility, then go for it. But I want no part of that. I don't think that's anything that's useful to anybody. Ultimately, you're dooming them to something just speaking positively about Bitcoin, but not really telling them about all the scams that are going on in altcoins. Those are bear traps, man. And if you're not warning them off of that, then you're doing them a horrible disservice.
Yeah, so I would say we talked a lot earlier on the call about people doing their own research and understanding the space. I don't think that it's really my place to kind of go through with each person that I'm working on the Orange Pill and outline my opinions on every single one of these issues, right? They kind of, I hand out the Inventing Bitcoin book by Jan Pritzker, and I say, read this and buy Bitcoin, and that sets them on a journey that I think is a lot more positive development than me going and sharing all of my opinions about Luna or Celsius. I mean, I certainly tell them to get it off and exchanged, regardless of which exchange it is, Coinbase, Celsius, whatever. But,
so why is that opinion important to tell them, but the other opinions about altcoins not important, and you don't warn them at all? I mean, I agree that you should take them off of exchanges, and that's a very important part of being self-sovereign over your own coins and so on. But why don't you warn? If you're warning them of one thing, that's also a bear trap. Then why aren't you warning them of other stuff? That seems like you're picking and choosing because you're less certain of your opinion, and not necessarily because the danger is. I can tell you from personal experience, the danger is far, far higher that people will go towards altcoins and lose all their money that way than some exchange going bust and then getting a haircut off the deposits that they have. I mean, that is a risk, and that's happened before. But the far greater danger, especially to people's souls, because you end up like selling your soul for this stuff, promoting it everywhere that you can, and then that's a far more common path. It's a far bigger trap than okay, I did put it down into my hardware wallet. So how do you justify, not guiding them off of one bear trap, but essentially not telling them about the other much bigger bear trap that's ahead, where they end up becoming degenerate gamblers, hoping to cash in on the next pump and dump.
I'll speak for me, Jimmy. I think you hit it spot on initially on your point and I'm just speaking on my behalf. If I understand it, able to articulate an argument, I dig into it and I'll fight tooth and nail about it. Have no problems being blunt or intense, especially when, it's like the Luna or the Celsius. I think where it gets a bit more complicated for me is not understanding that technology and having, multiple technologists that'll say, you've got the spectrum that'll say, hey, we've got the spectrum of decentralization. You've got max decentralization, which is Bitcoin. And then you have, you've either got Bitcoin or you've got stocks, and stocks should be part of your other assets should be part of your portfolio. I don't understand the technologies behind the different ones. So for me personally, I stick mostly, Bitcoin, majority Bitcoin, and then, and some Ethereum. And I, try to stay away from those games. I got wrecked, just like you're saying, wrecked back in 17, 18 in that space. But I do think it does. For someone that's less technologically inclined, is to say, hey, are there positive things that are happening in the decentralization space that are not Bitcoin, and understanding that there are many of them that are complete scams, but is there positive traction in that space that is worth getting involved in some capacity? And for friends, obviously, if you don't understand it, you shouldn't be, like, the number one rule for investing. If you don't understand it, you shouldn't get into that space. But having that discussion of whether or not there is anything other than Bitcoin that is providing value, I think that's just I don't understand that, and I have smart guys on both sides of the entire spectrum that will argue vehemently on it. And so for me personally, I've looked at it and it's like, okay, well, I'm highly slanted Bitcoin, and then, a little bit outside of that. But do you see positive things other than Bitcoin that are happening in the decentralization space?
Absolutely not. and they're all decentralized in name only. They're all centralized. And this a lot of people don't understand. It's because people like you don't dig into the technicals. They don't understand what centralization, decentralization means. They just see it as a buzzword, and somebody says that, they claim it, and they go, okay, that person sounds smart, so I'll believe them, versus, what Jimmy's saying. He's so mean, and he calls everything a scam, so I'll ignore him and go listen to this other guy. That to me is what like quote unquote civility is. Oh, I like this person better and the way he's saying it rather than this mean guy that keeps calling everything a scam. Sorry, I'm just telling you the truth. And I've looked at this stuff for a long time. I've studied this stuff. I know the technicals underneath. And if you have lots of other people like shouting different things at you, yeah, I get it. It's very difficult to determine what the truth is. Okay, maybe Balaji sounds smart. Maybe Stacks is something, and maybe Munib isn't a complete scammer. And what he's doing with Miami Coin was a one-off or whatever. Or maybe Solana is fine, and maybe this is fine, or whatever. If you don't understand the technicals, then yeah, you're liable to get very confused, and this is kind of the problem, right? But here's the thing. Here's what Bitcoin is. It's actually decentralized. Decentralization isn't a spectrum. You either have self-sovereignty over your coins or you don't. And you did not have self-sovereignty over your Luna coins or your Celsius coins, even if you held it in your own wallet or whatever, because they inflated it or made it bust or whatever, because there's a central control in the middle. It's a lot like the US dollar. And I'm telling you right now that other than Bitcoin, everything else is exactly like that. It's another fiat currency where the central controller can do whatever the heck they want. And even with something like Ethereum, which people for some reason think is more decentralized somehow, it's like centralized at like 7 different points. Just think about it this way. They change the rules every time they do a hard fork, which is every 6 months. And they change their monetary policy every 6 months. Does that sound like some? And that, I mean, this is indisputable. This is something that you can go and look up and go read the papers or whatever. That's indisputable fact. You're going to tell me that that's decentralized, that it's some sort of unique technology? No, it's an excuse for people to print tokens, to print their own money. And anytime anyone has had the power to print their own money, they've always abused it. And it's been abused in all of these protocols. Mostly on the front end through what we call a pre-mine. They just print a bunch of money for themselves and then release some to the public. And because they have all of this pre-mine, they can grow rich by hyping it to people that aren't technical enough to know the difference between what's real and what's not. And unfortunately, that's the position that most investors of altcoins are in. But you just do a little bit of research and find out what decentralization actually means, what the monetary policy of a particular coin is. See if the white paper even makes sense. And see if there's actually a central foundation that's like distributing these coins, or if there's a VC that got a huge pre-mine. I mean, these should be red flags for all of this stuff. And every single project has all of this. Are you still comfortable like thinking, oh, okay, well, maybe the truth is something that, there's some merit to what these guys are saying. They have a financial incentive to tell you that. I have no financial incentive other than for Bitcoin. I have no stake. I can't short any of this stuff. Why am I telling you this? Why are all these maximalists telling you this? Who's in the right here? If you still think that the truth is somewhere in between, I would suggest that you go dig just a little bit deeper. Because if you dig even a little bit, you'll find that these are some very obvious scams. And you don't have to be technical. It's just that most people don't want to do the work of actually looking, and instead are much more comforted by going with whatever the crowd says. Go have some balls. Go study for yourself and find out the truth on your own.
I don't disagree, Jimmy. I agree in the way that you're communicating about calling scams. In fact, I'm the reason why there's not an ATX coin. I worked with the Stacks folks and basically told them that we would oppose tooth and nail any attempt for them to create an Austin coin, an ATX coin, and fought that vehemently. But I did it with what I hope was winsomely and tactfully. My only point here is that there is a way that we can do this that will win more people over. That's my only point. I don't disagree with what you're talking about the urgency to look in and dig into things. There's just a way to do it that we can, you win more with honey than with a stick. I butchered that expression, but you know what I mean.
Hey, I got to hop here, guys.
I know what you're talking about, but I
got to hop. But
again,
I
I disagree. I've been in this space a long time.
Good stuff, Jimmy and everybody. Good night.
Thanks for jumping in.
Have a good one. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Jimmy, I gotta say, I haven't enjoyed being schooled so maybe ever. So I love the passion to it, and it is I think that it's one of those things where, at least for me, maybe I'm just lower on the IQ curve. I think the challenge that I've got, when I'm looking at kind of Ethereum and some of the stuff that goes on, is it's a challenge for me to look at it and say that when you're looking at Bitcoin, it's Bitcoin, you've got the decentralization, and then the only other option is SEC and stocks. And so that, I think that's one of the things I just in transfer of title is it's handled by the state and fragmented across all over the place. And I think that when I'm looking at those, that's where I look at it and I'm like, I have difficulty wrapping my head around that. So when these arguments come on, hey, here's some of the stuff that's some of the benefits that they built, and I do agree, like the NFT, when you look at the NFT space, it's insanity. It's all based on some potential use in the future. But yeah, I think that's but to your point, I love the energy that's behind. There's nothing more important than the money at the end of the day, and removing the distortion in the market pricing.
Hopefully I've convinced you guys to warn people off of altcoins, because that's the number one danger in my mind. Anyone that I've orange filled or whatever, they almost always go into altcoins, even after I warn them. And this is not something, you can't really help that. That's kind of their problem. And maybe they had like a tendency towards degenerate gambling or whatever. But this has been the unfortunate sort of like second step for a lot of people, and they get wrecked. Sometimes they come back and say, you were right, and I should have listened to you. Most of them go away quietly. They're kind of secretly ashamed that they lost a lot of money, I think. But I still think we should tell the truth and try to get people on this stuff. And if you're not convicted that this is actually all these altcoins are a scam, I suggest you dig deeper and actually learn about it and not listen to opinions of other people, because that's the easiest way in which you can get it manipulated. Go read the actual thing and see what that actual thing is about, rather than, okay, well, Charles Hutchinson says this is X and Y or whatever, and Vitalik Buterin says this is X and Y and whatever, and therefore I should invest in it because he sounds smart. That's exactly how you get manipulated. Unfortunately, too many people are getting manipulated in this space. This is why we don't have Bitcoin adoption. It's not because of toxicity or how people say things or whatever. It's because they fall down altcoin rabbit holes. I've seen this over and over and over. And one of the blessings of a bear market is that a lot of those people come back and they realize, oh crap, I just got scammed. And I've been scammed on a lot of this stuff. Well, just watch, like the top 20 coins right now, other than like maybe the stable coins, maybe, but even those I wouldn't put past blowing up. Top 20 altcoins, you're not going to hear from like 10 or 15 of those in like 3 years. Like they're going to fall down the chart or whatever. There's going to be a new hotness, some other scam that somebody's running or whatever that's going to catch fire. But a lot of this stuff that's up in the top 15, they're not going to be there. In the top 20, they're not going to be there, and at that point, people start saying, "Oh, maybe I was scammed. Maybe, this thing wasn't what I thought it was, or whatever. I wanted it to be true, and instead of actually looking through what the technicals are or what the actual use cases are, just do a tiny bit of research, right? Like, just, is there a market for what they're selling? Are people actually doing it? A very basic question that Alan Farrington asks about DeFi is, okay, where's the yield coming from? What's the productive capacity that these debt instruments actually come from? And he comes to the conclusion, it's expansion, it's printing your own tokens. It's all built on a house of cards. That's a report that's based on first principles. Where's the yield coming from? If you can't answer that question, you're probably being scammed. And that's what all of these things are. So just do a little bit of research, guys. That's I'm pleading with you. Like, if any of what I said is even like tickling any part of your brain, just go look and research instead of swallowing marketing narratives whole hog, like, oh, NFTs are going to solve the starving artist problem and artists will get paid fairly and blah, blah, blah. That's not, like, go do some research. How many artists have actually made money on that stuff, right? How many artists are able to, like, it's like 7 artists and most of them are corporations, right? It's the punks or whatever, and the Bored Apes or whatever, and it's like nobody else made any money. It's just like a giant scam for OpenSea or whatever. Like, just do a little bit of research. I beg you.
Jimmy, I agree with you, man. Just a small disagreement on tactics. Just a small disagreement on tactics.
All right. Anyway, I should get going. It's I think I stayed past what I 2 hours already. So.
Yeah, I think we were trying to shoot this for an hour, but listen, we appreciate you. I mean, I appreciate you going on there, and like I said, I love the energy that you bring to it, and I think it's a religious fervor that if people had that. If people had more religious fervor, I don't think that we'd be, we would have slid so far down the spectrum with people are fairly lukewarm and we've kind of drifted into, the state has so much power and the money has been diluted and we have theft through taxation and, just all the insanity that's kind of gone on. If, we need people that believe strongly in their principles and appreciate that. So even if I'm on the receiving end of being wrong and I appreciate it. So thank you and everybody in the space. We've got a recording for this. We'll be sending it out there. And Jimmy, you don't know this, but we're actually doing a thing for an article for Bitcoin Magazine, kind of recapping stuff. So this will probably make it into that article, which is great. So thanks again for your time.
Yeah, hope you got something out of it.
Absolutely, we certainly did. I know I did. All right, guys. We'll let you go, and we'll catch you to the next event.
All right. Bye, guys.
All right.
See you, Jimmy. Thanks for tuning in, guys.